Well, let's get started, Reverend Hicks. Can you tell us a little bit? I know that in astrology, it's so easy to talk about an event after it happened, but you discussed the Japanese tsunami before it happened. Can you tell us a little
That's
bit about
correct.
how that came to be?
Well, I wanted to get on Fox News in Macon. A friend of mine had a contact there, and this is back in the summer months of 2010. And I went down and read for the people in the PR firm that my friend knows, Terrell Sandifer and Grayson and some other people. And they just kind of listened to me, and they go, well, okay. And then I came back home. And then the stuff I told them started happening within a week after I was there. And so Grayson, I went back down again to reach for them again. And the next time I went, the stuff happened again. So the person that could get me on Fox was Terrell Sandifer. So she told him that I told her to start working on it because usually the last week of March and the first 2 weeks of April, there's always some kind of upheaval with our with the war zone aspects, but also with weather patterns and unusual stuff. And I knew that there's a lot of things coming up in March and April of 2011, and I really wanted to be on the news to report it before the stuff happened. So in February, she kept telling Terrell that she should have me on there, and I had gone to Florida, and when I came home, all of a sudden, Terrell decided he wanted me on there, and I was on March 10th at 10:30 at night till 11 o'clock on Fox Files, and I got to talk about the aspects that I wanted to talk about, which was in alignment of a lot of planets in Aries and a lot of fiery planets. But at the same time, Neptune had gone into Pisces, and Neptune's only in Pisces once. And every 168 years, it takes 14 years to go through one sign. And Neptune's transit in its own sign of Pisces indicates that the shorelines will begin to disappear and the oceans are going to start rising up over this next 14 years. So we're already 2 years into it. So on that night, I talked about the summer of 2011 would be the hottest summer on record for us. We'd break all recorded temperatures in the summer months, at least for the state of Georgia, we would. But the last thing I said on the news was that there would be disturbance on the ocean floor, causing the ocean to rise up and the shorelines would begin to disappear. We need to pray for the United States and pray for the world at large because things are about to change within the next 3 weeks.
Wow, that is amazing.
And within 6 hours, there was a disturbance on the ocean floor. The tsunami came and it hit Japan, and then it came back and hit the U.S.
That is very, very, to me, it's just sort of frightening. But knowing about it beforehand, what can we do to prepare for something as wrathful as a tsunami,
Well, yeah, and then the other thing is, we can pray. Prayer is always a good thing. And then that summer, on June the 1st, here in Atlanta, at midnight, it was 90 degrees. And from that moment on, we had 90 consecutive days where every single day was above 90 degrees, and we've never had that before.
Yeah, in our private conversations before the show, you told me once it was 90 degrees like at midnight in Georgia. At midnight.
Yeah, well, it was on June the 1st. It's never been that high. It's midnight. It started on June the 1st, 2011. And from that day, the first day of June, it was 90 degrees at midnight, and then we had 90 days after that. Wow. Each day was above 90 degrees.
That's amazing. That's like the surface of an alien planet. I mean, because the sun's not even out at midnight. It's nighttime. You should be able to get some relief.
But the aspects, the planets were all in the fire signs, and when there's a bunch of planets in fire signs, whatever element is predominant is what we're going to get a lot of. So it was an Aries and hot sign, so it means a heat wave's coming. Okay. Now, all the planets are lined up in water signs, and they're not just the quick-moving planets, they're the slow-moving planets, which means water everywhere. The water is going to continue to come and flood out places where they've never had a problem because we haven't had this grand trine that started on June the 28th of this year, 2013, where Jupiter, which takes 12 years to transit all 12 signs, is in Cancer now. Then we've got Neptune still in Pisces for another 12 more years, and it rules the ocean. And we've got Saturn, as of October of last year, moved into Scorpio, and it's going to be there for another 2 years. Saturn represents the skeletal system of the body, bones, teeth, and knees, structural things. Scorpio rules things below the Earth's surface, things that we can't see, like a surgeon. You know, we see the body on the outside, but they work on the internal organs, removing things or stitching things up. So Scorpio has to go in below the surface. So Saturn in Scorpio indicates pipe problems, sewage problems, things underneath the ground, and that would be pipes bursting, could be the gas pipes bursting, problems with flood, structural things with sewers and this kind of thing. Bridges going out because there are things, structures over water. So we have that aspect in effect for 2 years. Jupiter rules the United States because the United States is Cancer. Cancer rules the stomach. The stomach rules food, shows issues with food and crops. Excessive amounts of water will pretty much wash out some of our crops, and we may not see that much this year, but next year, by the time June rolls around, it will be an issue. And then with Neptune, we're discovering more and more things over this next year on the ocean floor. Things that have been hidden for thousands of years are being brought to the surface. One, there's a giant crystal that they finally discovered off the coast of Bermuda, which Edgar Casey has talked about since day one. Well, thanks to Neptune and Pisces, these things are coming to light.
Yes, they say the conventional wisdom about Jupiter is that, and it's almost a cliche what they say, that he makes bigger and expands whatever it is that he touches. And now here Jupiter is in the cardinal water sign. And even as we speak, I see news reports of floods all over the place, even in your neck of the woods. Gilmer County, Georgia, flash floods. We have tornadoes and floods striking across Sweden. We have severe floods in North Korea, Pennsylvania. So they're all over the place, this flooding.
Yeah, it's just getting started. We have a whole year of this to look forward to, but the most significant thing is when Jupiter gets between 24 and 26 degrees of Cancer, gets pretty close in November, but by the end of May, June of next year, it actually arrives exactly at those degrees. The last time that happened, we had the Ohio River in 1884 on February the 14th, crested 71 feet above the riverbanks and flooded out the whole area. It's one of the worst floods in recorded history. And so the middle part of the U.S. would be the Mississippi River, and that's pretty much the breadbasket, the middle part of the U.S. So those areas will also be hit from the excessive flooding with these particular aspects.
So we're not just talking about we're not just talking about an inconvenience here, having to take our galoshes and umbrellas. We're talking about perhaps something impacting our food supply.
That's correct. And it won't be apparent this year, but it will be more apparent next year. When Jupiter makes its final transit out of Cancer, we'll see what that means, because when Jupiter was in Gemini, when it made its final transit back in May, we had that big tornado touchdown and pretty much wiped out those couple of states. That was it. Jupiter represents excess, and it's in Gemini, which represents wind. It represents the element of air.
I see. So Jupiter is usually more benevolent than he's acting here, but I see now once he gets involved with the weather, the image that springs to mind is the traditional image of Zeus hurling thunderbolts from Mount Olympus. You know, Jupiter can be quite vengeful when he wants to be, can he?
Well, the other thing is, because we have the cardinal signs, we've got Uranus in Aries, which has to do with sudden and unexpected things without warning. Jupiter squaring that, which means an aspect of tension. And then we have Pluto in Capricorn, opposites, so we have a T-square. And the open end of the T-square is in Libra. So we'll have a lot of things coming up in the end of September also, because it points to that stretch, that's the bow and arrow drawn taunt. That's the bullseye is when the planets go into Libra as well. So there should be something happening when we have the full moon in September, because the full moon will be in Pisces. Pisces the moon will be conjuncting Neptune, and that has to do with watery aspects. And then again in November, we have alignment of 7 planets in water signs when we have the new moon in November. So those are the 2 times to watch for excessive amounts of water appearing in different areas around the world.
Oh my God! It's such a shame that the Red Cross and the various emergency agencies won't give you a serious and attentive ear on these matters. They could certainly plan for these catastrophes well in advance. Of course, I imagine they're planning for things already. But with astrology, we could probably pinpoint specific danger zones, specific times when there would be meteorological eruptions and things of that nature. Am I right?
That's correct. That's right. And the ancients knew, and the Egyptians knew about the tidal flow or the pull from the full moon. And when I worked at the hospital, you know, when it was the full moon, I didn't really want to work on those nights because it was always the minute 8 o'clock hit and the moon hit the horizon, my code beeper would go off, and all these people would be piling into the hospital. So people think that the planets have no effect on us. Well, they do. And the sunspot activity, you know, when we have that, it really does change things here on the Earth. And we can't see the sunspot activity without the help of NASA, but we know that does impact us, and so does the full moon. Brings the greatest tides in, and a lot of people, there's a lot of babies born on the full moon. But there's a lot of unusual things always happen. A lot of tidal waves and stuff come around the full moon as well.
Yes,
always,
and it's pretty
bad.
It's pretty observable. You talk to any emergency worker, and they'll tell you that during moments when the moon is full, things can get kind of hairy. I mean, the word lunacy, in fact, comes from luna, which means moon, and so, yeah, it's almost a cliche that the freaks come out at the full moon, so to speak. We're so sensitive to celestial changes, and we don't even realize how sensitive we are to them, how they affect our biorhythms.
Yeah. Well, that's what people just don't get is that astrology really does impact our lives, and they think that, well, you know, they can see maybe how the sun could do it or how the moon could do it, but how does Jupiter impact us? Well, it's still part of our solar system. You know, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not impacting us on some level. And usually wherever it is, it brings about changes. But every time we've ever had a lot of planets in water signs, especially Saturn or Jupiter or the slower moving planets in water signs, there's always been an issue with some kind of flood. When in '93, when Saturn was in Pisces, here in Georgia in the spring, Lake Hartwell flooded, and 85 was closed, and that's our major thoroughfare. And then in the fall, or towards the September, the 75 South was flooded out, and all these coffins came up and were floating in the river. But 75 was you couldn't pass through Macon at that time. So we've never had that before. But
wow.
Saturn represents structures, a skeletal system. It was in Pisces, which is water, and sure enough, it was both of those highways for a period of time were totally impassable. They were underwater.
That is pretty macabre, that image of the coffins being disgorged from the earth and floating. That's a pretty macabre image, but it's very Saturnian once we think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And it's very much pertinent to Scorpio as well, in the sense of things being disgorged from the earth, especially things that are buried. And as you said, Saturn now is in Scorpio. Scorpio has to do with healing, and I can't help but wonder if some of these geological effects won't be some type of ecological healing, some ecological homeostasis, some process of healing that the planet itself is going to be going through.
Yeah, well, on the flip side, on the positive side, since we have so many planets in water signs have to do with our emotions, our emotional body, and getting more in touch with that, the healing side. Because Neptune is the great healer, and Saturn and Jupiter, with all the water signs being in those represented, it has a lot to do with education, learning more about our emotions and how our emotions affect us, that our feeling nature, how powerful that is. But it also has a lot to do opening up to the spirit world and the unseen dimensions, because Neptune rules the unconscious, the subconscious mind. So through dream state and other levels of like ashram, then and Jupiter has to do with religion, law, philosophy, higher education, long distance trip traveling. People don't live close by. So in the sign of Cancer, it shows an awakening, a spiritual awakening taking place too. So those are the positive things that the American public and the world at large will begin to look at things in the bigger picture, that we're not split or separate, that everything is impacting, we're all connected, that nothing is split or separate.
The picture that Jupiter in Cancer seems to paint for me is a very global one, in the sense that Cancer is obviously domestic. It's my home, it's your home, it's America. But as you just said, Jupiter represents foreignness, long distance. So it's almost as if the picture that this placement paints is global type of floods all over the place, global consequences for all of this cardinal rushing water.
Yeah.
But
it's more and more becoming of the global economy too. If it affects one area and one goes, like the domino effect, if it's impacted here and impacts somewhere else, importing and exporting goods too. And the other thing is, with the aspects that we've got going on, since we have so much more water coming, it also can create increases mosquito population, like the West Nile virus, and also things with water, things that would travel through the water, things that would impact our water, whether it's, at some point it may get to the point where it's so much water we're not sure if it's drinkable water or clean water, and that are contaminated water. That also is an aspect that can be brought about. Our awareness of quality drinking water, and more people are becoming more aware of that maybe the tap water is not so great. You need to have a water purifier. So, just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's just not there. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's pretty common. Well, it should be common knowledge that we're facing a serious picture with our water supplies. The minority, a very disturbing minority of the Earth's water supply is potable, something like 3%, and of that 3%, a significant portion is locked in the polar ice caps. So we all should be extremely worried about our water supply and where it's going to be coming from. I know I would dump my investment dollars into anything having to do with water. But speaking about dollars, because I know this is a show on the weather, but obviously all of this disturbing weather is going to affect the economic picture, as you just said. What do you think is going to happen to the United States dollar as a result of dealing with some of these meteorological disturbances? The economy.
Unfortunately, I think it'll tap us out, because America, because we are Cancer, we're the nation that feeds the world. So a lot of us, we're basically the farmers, the mother that nurtures all the other countries. So a lot to do with importing, exporting when it comes to the wheat belt or the corn belt or our food supply. It's a powerful part of our world economy. So if there is the floods could affect that too. So, but the one thing is, in the next year, they're going to be more and more aware of is how interconnected we really are. That nothing really is split or separate. It doesn't matter if they're in Sumatra or they're in Cancun or Seattle. It's all these things we're all very much connected, and I think more and more people are becoming aware of that.
Yes, it's definitely becoming more and more important in this day and age, and I just certainly hope. I love to see. I mean, I don't want to say love, but one positive thing that comes about from tsunamis and catastrophes is that we all seem to unify. We knit ourselves together into this one big human fabric to help each other.
That's true. And on the positive side of it is, because we are becoming more spiritually aware, the fourth dimension, as of 12/21/12, is coming to the third dimension. So there's a lot of things happening very fast and very quick, where years ago it took years and years for anything to get resolved or to happen. Now it can happen by the end of the day. So just like the Tibetan masters would sit and meditate all day long and send positive prayers and chants into the ethers worldwide when they were in Tibet. Now they're dispersed and they're all over the place. each person has the ability to do the same thing each day. Because if you're at peace with yourself, you change the vibration of each person you come in contact with for the better. So the ultimate goal is to work on creating that positive place within yourself and radiating that out into the world.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, as if this grand trine and water signs weren't enough, I do believe that we're also going through something in the earth signs as well, aren't we? Isn't there something significant happening in the earthy signs?
Well, the earth sign trine trinity that happens this week is between the moon in Taurus on Monday, and then Venus is in Virgo, and then Pluto is in Capricorn. So in the heavens, there would be it looks like a six-pointed star, the Star of David, and it was formed earlier this week by the water signs intertwining with the earth signs. So the earth and the water signs astrologically would benefit greatly this week from that aspect. But it's just kind of like a peaceful aspect unfolding, which is good. But it's only in effect for this week, and then after that, Venus moves forward and is out of and the moon is not in Taurus anymore, it's out. So it's only for 2 days that it actually occurred on the 29th and the 30th that we felt that impact from that. And those were days where a lot of things really started happening for people in business. People you haven't heard from in years may have called, but some out of the ordinary things that were very positive occurred on Monday and Tuesday of this week because of that.
Oh, yeah. The moon is very fleeting, isn't it? She doesn't stay long in any one sign at all.
No, 2.5 days, and that's it. It's done. It's gone.
Well, what I'm curious about is, okay, so we have this grand trine in the water signs. Does it take what else can happen to trigger an actual event? For example, transiting planets like Mars and things of that nature. Can you tell us a little bit about what transiting Mars can do to shake up this trine?
Well, it's not that Mars could do some damage, but it would more be when the moon is full or when it's noon. When it's full or when it's new or when it's full. So the next aspect I'd be looking for was when the moon goes into Pisces and conjuncts Neptune and adds more water to the already existing grand trine in water. So if, on September, when we get to the exact day, let's see here, it's like the 18th and 19th, when the moon goes into Pisces, and it also lines up with Neptune. At that point in time, Venus is also in Scorpio. So we have the moon and Venus also in water signs, along with the other three. So we've got 5 planets in water signs at that point in time. So and then the other planets are in earth signs. And so if you combine earth with water, what do you get?
Mud.
You get mud.
Landslides.
That can eat mudslides, and mud moves, and so it can be the West Coast could have a lot of mudslide issues, and also it's an aspect of sinkholes. Here in the Atlanta area, we've had some issues with sinkholes in the past, but it also indicates that in the next year or so we can have a lot more sinkholes or issues here. And at least where I live, I know it to be true because Atlanta's chart has a lot of Scorpio planets in it and Capricorn, so. We definitely will get that, but that's something that can be impacted in other places as well.
Sinkholes can be quite deadly. Can you imagine laying in your bed listening to your iPod or whatever, and then the next thing you know, you're about 12 feet underground with a couple tons of earth on top of you? I mean, that happened to a man in Florida recently. The sinkholes can kill you.
It's pretty frightening. It happened in Atlanta. My sister, when she was married to her husband, he worked at one of the hotels down in Atlanta in Midtown, in the Marriott Courtyard, and he'd gone in at 5 o'clock in the morning to set up the breakfast bar, and a lady that always worked with him, she had a little kid, and she was a single mom, and she parked her car in the parking lot. And before she could get out of the car, there was a sinkhole that collapsed, and her car totally disappeared in the parking lot. It went about 25 or 30 feet down, and it was a major pipe burst, and she was found way down underneath there and like 2 blocks away.
Oh my good, 2 blocks away from the event?
Yeah, underneath the city streets. Period.
Oh man, that is
I mean,
awful.
it's just like the earth opened up and she was gone.
That's something of biblical proportions almost.
I know, but it seems like with this particular aspect, there's a lot of more unusual phenomena like that we can anticipate. And it's not something you want to have happen, but that's exactly what these aspects can imply.
Well, a lot of people, they might scoff at the notion that astrology can say anything at all about the weather, but these same people will attribute a religious significance to the crazy weather that we've been having. And, they know, they intuit that something celestial is going on, that something bigger than themselves is responsible for all of this crazy weather. So what do you think about this idea that there is some, I don't want to say religious significance, but the Christian tradition, they quote the scripture that you can't tell the seasons due to the blossoms of the trees and things like of that nature. What do you think about the religious aspects of this? What do you think the religious people their reaction would be to all of this crazy weather? I'm curious.
Well, kind of like maybe like Armageddon, or it's like the end times, like the last part of the Bible, the book of Daniel, the book of Revelations. Right. There'll be signs of the fire in the sky, or signs in the heaven. But
right,
yeah,
it's apocalyptic.
It's definitely escalated in the last few years compared to what it has been, because it's we just never know. A tornado can touch down in no time, and even here in Atlanta, we've had at least once a week a bolt of lightning's come down and hit someone's house and just totally taken out the house. And I can't remember in the 53 years I've been alive that it seems like every week there's a thunderstorm that comes through and a bolt of lightning hits someone's house and it's totally torched. I mean, it's almost been like a weekly occurrence here.
It's amazing.
So, yeah, out of the ordinary. But the other positive thing is that since we are spiritual beings in what appears to be a physical form, we are magnetic energy, we're not what we think we are, we're the thoughts that we think, we have the ability to work with this information and change it. Collective consciousness is a very powerful thing. So through prayer and through meditation, we have the ability to offset some of these things that I've talked about tonight.
So we can use a collective sort of power to shunt the energy into a different manifestation, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, we can change it and make it positive. Impact the world in a very positive way with it. And that's the water signs, are compassion and love and the feeling nature, and working more with our emotional self, our emotional body, and making that conscious connection. And it could be through mantra, yantra, or certain songs, or chanting. Those always seem to be pretty powerful. Singing is very... mantras or yantras or singing or chanting is very powerful. But when they have the World Aid concerts, everybody goes and sings, how much fun that is. It's like it makes, like that Coca-Cola song that came out a long time, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. If more and more people would work along those lines, we have the ability to change a great deal.
Well, we'll definitely have plenty of opportunity to change a great deal, because especially the slower moving planets like Neptune, he's going to be in Pisces for a good long time, I think, until about 2025. So we definitely got some time. But Reverend Charlene, we have to go to commercial break. We have to go to commercial break real fast. We're going to take a break for about 1 minute, and we'll come right back. But before we go, I'd like to remind everybody that you can visit charlenehicks.com and get a nice discount off of any kind of booking or session with Reverend Hicks. She's not only an astrologer, but also a psychic medium as well. And that offer is good until Sunday. So we will be right back in 1 minute.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. you don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at psychicaccess.com.
Welcome back. You are listening to The Psychic Viewpoint, brought to you by psychicaccess.com. And tonight we have with us Reverend Charlene Hicks, and we are, in true Southern fashion, talking about the weather. Reverend Hicks, before we left, I asked about Neptune and Pisces. This is one of my personal favorites because, he's just so slow. He's going to be there for a long time. You see, so
That's right.
We'd better get used to.
That's right. Better get used to it.
And you said earlier that Neptune likes to dissolve things, and you specifically mentioned shorelines and erosion types of issues. Can you give us a little bit more information about the weather effects Neptune might have?
Well, Neptune is called the cosmic Santa Claus. Neptune rules ethers. It rules drugs, hospitals, and institutions. That which is behind the scenes, nebulous things, gaseous substances, perfumes, liquids, water, and poisons. So Neptune can be like termites in your walls. You can't see it, but if I put my hand up there, my hand goes through the wall. Well, there's Neptune. It camouflages stuff, so you can't always tell exactly what it is because it's like it casts shadows. Neptune rules the unconscious mind, rules movies, subliminal messages. So when Neptune's in Pisces, since Pisces rules, it's in its own sign, rules the ocean, and it has to do with tapping into our unconsciousness. It has to do with spiritual ashrams. It has to do with music and higher vibrations. And Neptune is also the higher octave of the planet Venus. And Venus is personal love, our personal ability to attract things to us from a financial standpoint, whatever our abilities are, but also our personal love life. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, and it has to do with like the Christic consciousness, divine love and compassion. And it has to do with the great sacrifice. So on the one hand, it rules feet, and it rules the lymphatic system of the body. So there would be the new discoveries, and maybe things would help people with foot issues, one. But the lymphatic system, like AIDS or hard-to-diagnose illnesses, usually is attributed to Neptune, strong influence in the chart, when you're looking at a natal chart of someone. So Neptune would have to do with discoveries that would be helpful in the healing arts. And it could a lot to do with the fact that they find how powerful sound is on healing. You know, we have lasers, which are lights, but also how sound and tones and a certain resonance is very healing. The Aborigines, they communicate telepathically, but they know how to do tones and sounds. And if I jumped off a bridge and I had a compound fracture, the Aborigines could come stand around me and do a certain tone, and my leg would be instantaneously healed and no longer a compound fracture.
Wow.
They have this, and there are people on the earth plane that have that ability, and that's something in the next few years we'll become more and more aware of, is the impact on sound and vibration, how it impacts us from our spiritual body, from our mental body, from our emotional body, and from our physical body. Sound really does. And so think about the tests they've been doing on the ocean floor with sonar. And a lot of the whales have beached themselves, and the dolphins have come up because of sonar activity on the ocean floor as a weaponry. So sound, you know, sometimes the frequency we can't hear it, but we could feel it, and it can make us also physically ill. The ancients knew a great deal about sound and how to levitate things through sound. So if you can levitate things with sound, why couldn't it also produce a healing to certain organs of our body? And you know, Edgar Casey talks about these things. You know, they have to do with the etheric body, and that's something that's going to be more and more known about, or talked about, or scientifically proven. in this time frame with Neptune in Pisces is about the etheric body and how we can diagnose illness if you can see in the auric field, the etheric body, what's wrong with the person before it impacts them physically and has to be surgically removed. So certain sounds and certain resonances is very healing. And that's something that's going to become more and more apparent and taught at universities, how important certain vibration is. Color has a vibration. Color is very healing. And they've done studies, and in a place in England, a guy was a great color theorist, and they had a factory, and they asked him to come out because these women, they changed the temperature to 72 degrees, but the women never took off their coats. They complained it was too cold in there. And so the walls were painted this dull gray color. And the color theorist guy came in there and said, you need to paint the walls peach, and then everything will be fine. Well, peach is orange and white, which creates sociability and is communication and makes people happy. So because of that, when they painted it that color, the women complained it was too hot at 72. They went back to 68, and the women never put their coats back on. So color has a vibration, and the color vibration also has a note or a musical note that correlates with the color. So through color and sounds, certain resonance or tones, we can heal people with that as well.
That's interesting.
The Egyptians knew about that because if you had, say, a blood disorder, you'd go into the pyramid at a certain time. There's a big crystal in there. When the sunlight hit it, all of a sudden it becomes the blue room. So if you had lesions on the body or topical issues with lesions or skin issues, the blue is cooling, so that would help that. If you had a blood disorder, then you need to be in with the red room because the red is the color of the blood, but also gives you energy. It's the color of physical life force energy. So color and sound will be something that comes up more and more with Neptune and Pisces. These subtle things that we've always seen it, we've always kind of known it, but to the extent of it and how this can be seen in a person's auric field in their etheric body and how that's impacting them physically on these other levels.
Well, I do believe sound has a special significance as well because it's a sense that can cross lines. For example, bats and other animals echolocate, and I even saw a blind human. I saw a special about a blind human who could get around by echolocation just as easily as you and I could get around using our sense of sight. So maybe advances in that field will come into prominence, and sound will actually be leveraged for its healing powers. I'm hoping that Jupiter might help with that because we can't forget these planets are locked in a trine with one another where they cooperate with one another, no?
And they do. Yeah, and Jupiter and Cancer would have to do with a special type of, it could be dealing with hospice care or homes for an education, but educating people more about families and the continuity of family, and from the spiritual standpoint, that pretty much everyone is our family, that, you know, there is this common denominator that we're really not split or separate. But Cancer has a lot to do with family, and it has to do with women, and it has a lot to do with nurturing and taking care of people, because it represents the mother. And Jupiter has to do with colleges and universities, higher education, lawyers, doctors, things at a distance. It has to do with the superconscious mind and what the world thinks. So it's the quality of consciousness is that we are all one, that nothing is really split or separate. And this is something that will be an ongoing thing that becomes stronger and stronger. And I also believe that during this time frame, you know, when you and I go to sleep at night, our body sleeps, but we go to class every night. Our spiritual self doesn't sleep. We're always learning something on other dimensions. We may not be consciously aware of it, but we are. So there's a lot of this is becoming more and more part of the conscious waking state. You know how you're driving and you kind of go into automatic pilot, like you're in a light trance state? Well, we're getting stuff all the time. But more and more people are going to learn about this, you know, methods of hypnosis or the methods of induction to remember things, but also to be more in that lucid state where they can retrieve things from the unconscious mind. And I think that's something that's going to be more apparent as time unfolds, is how powerful our unconscious mind is, and being able to tap into that is probably one of the most powerful things of all. What is in our unconscious mind, to be able to understand and draw from that in a greater capacity. What the brain can really do, especially the unconscious.
And that's sort of going to be an unavoidable side effect of this grand trine in the water signs. I mean, rather bluntly looking at it, we see there's going to be a lot of water, but keeping in mind that the water element stands for the subconscious, the emotional bodies, and all of that good stuff. With these three important planets there, then this is going to amount to a fairly radical transformation. America ought to be a much different place, in 2020, 2025 than it is today. It's going to be interesting to see the changes that we're going to undergo.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of them. And with Saturn and Scorpio, it brings things from the underneath the surface to the light. Saturn also has to do, Scorpio has to do a secret. So Saturn shows a lot of things about maybe the ancient mystery schools, or things being discovered, ancient texts or tablets or archaeological digs, and things being brought to light that really explain a lot about how we're here, where do we come from, what is truly our lineage, and other things that won't be able to be refuted by other people, because there'll be the factual information to back it up.
Oh, that reminds me of a National Geographic article I read about this young Incan girl. I can't even pronounce the name of the mountain in Peru where they found her at. She was found at the summit of a mountain 22,000 feet high. She was left there as a sacrifice 500 years ago, and her body looks just as if it had been, just as if she had died yesterday. I mean, recognizable facial features. And this is all reminding me of Saturn in Scorpio. The coldness of Saturn, the frigidity of Saturn, the healing of Scorpio, and the medicinal aspects of Scorpio, because they're, taking samples of this young girl's hair and all of this good stuff. And hearing you talk about the archaeological treasures that we're finding and linking those, correlating those to our spiritual development, makes me think of this young 15-year-old maiden who died 500 years ago and just looks as if she passed away yesterday. It's really amazing to see a picture of this girl. I showed some of my friends, and they thought that I was trying to hoax them. I had to prove.
Well, the other thing is, with all the water planets, it has a lot to do with the feminine energy, the Gaia energy, the earth energy coming back. Less of the masculine warring factions of the Aries, or that is more the softer feminine energy, the nurturing energy from all the water signs too. And in Peru, they said that when they looked at the Incas, the high priests weren't men; they were all women. And that's information that hasn't really come out yet. But they found that all the high priests that were Incas were women.
Well, this emphasis on the watery signs certainly has to be a cosmic push toward a respect and an increased reverence for the feminine, because we've lost any mechanism for honoring the feminine with the advent of the masculine solar religions such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism. We've lost the psychological mechanism for honoring the goddess, for honoring the feminine principle. And I'm hoping that this emphasis in the water signs will be a push in that direction. Do you see?
It definitely is. The need for greater understanding, compassion, at the world at large, and other countries, and the dividing of things up and equally sharing that what we have, instead of trying to hoard stuff, but to realize that there's enough for everyone, and that there isn't a lack. Just get rid of the lack consciousness that seems to permeate. And I think it's more propaganda than anything else. There's plenty of everything for everybody. But with the way the government and everybody else trying to get in their control, and creates all this fear and negative energy. And reality is that there is an abundance everywhere. And that if you're a spiritual being and what appears to be a visible form, your magnetic energy, you have the ability to draw and evoke to yourself exactly what you need wherever it is you are. And money has nothing to do with that. It has to do with your own consciousness. That, nothing is split or separate. And that was what Jesus talked about. That all the things I have done, ye shall do, and even greater. And people always never seem to remember that. But He was a way shower. He didn't come to start a religion. He came to impart that this is a way to live and to incorporate the spiritual qualities into your life and believe that all things are possible. And I always tell my clients, if it didn't happen at 4:52, doesn't mean it can't happen at 6:52. You know, sometimes it's in God's time, you know, or maybe God has a different plan for us. We just can't see it right now.
So true. And I'm thinking sometimes it takes a meteorological disaster to drive home this point that there is plenty to go around for everyone. Sometimes it takes a tsunami in Thailand or Japan in order to unify us and get us to share our abundance with those who need it the most. Sometimes it takes a weather disaster to make that happen. Maybe this could be one of the reasons, you know, one of the lessons behind the future weather we're going to have to suffer through. Because I worry about the developing world. You know,
you worry about what now?
I worry about the third world, the developing world, the countries that lack infrastructure to deal with massive floods and the problems with crops and the rise of disease, you know, waterborne illnesses that are going to come from this and all of that good stuff. I fear that they're going to feel the brunt of all of this weather wrath, you know?
Yeah, well, at the same time, the collective consciousness of the Aquarian age, which we find ourselves in, we have the ability to send this positive energy as a group of people, just like through prayer, to other places that need it, and it really is felt. The angel world and other than magnetic qualities from the spiritual realm help, and they hear us, and there always is help around. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean they're not helping in some capacity. And people, I think, are becoming more and more aware of this presence, the spiritual presence, that there's something else at work here, and how things magically appear and disappear at times, but there are more unusual things happening that are very profound. And what we would consider miracles, really, in spiritual terms, is a part of who we are, the highest expression of who we are. It actually is, it can be a daily occurrence. It doesn't have to be just once in a blue moon, but it can happen daily if we're open to it. And that's where our consciousness is leading us towards that greater place.
Well, let me ask you this, Reverend Hicks. Every time there's a Katrina or a tsunami and everybody, you know, pulls together and donates, etc., inevitably we lapse back into a mentality of materialism and selfishness. As I'm speaking collectively here, could we dodge future catastrophes if we can somehow maintain this attitude of sharing and compassion? Would that be manifesting the energy healthily, or are we still going to get hit by the weather train regardless?
I think there's still going to be, but I think it lessens the St. Germain and Travis Bay and the rest of them have always said that we have the ability to change these things. We have the consciousness to do it. And through what we've studied and know, this is true. It really is true, because I've seen Buzz Aldrin 3 times in my life, and I've actually got to talk to him on my own privately. And he once stated that the Russians learned about low frequency, and they were determined to get California to fall into the ocean, and they started sending this low frequency to our West Coast. And we have nothing to defer that kind of energy coming to the West Coast at that time. And he said the powers that be made sure that nothing happens because California is still there. But he said there was nothing we could do to defend ourselves against that.
Wow, that's scary. What do you think about all these people?
But the cool thing is, just because they have all those the weapons and stuff, doesn't mean that it's always going to work or that there isn't interference from above. Otherwise, we would have been annihilated a long time ago. We would have just nuked ourselves out a long time ago. But there are powers that be that keep things in balance and in check. And I feel like there's always been help from above. And
what do you think about
in our lifetime, in the next couple of years, we'll see more of those things happening. And it's going to be a very profound awakening. You know, when you look at the tarot cards, or you look at what is Judgment Day, it has to do with the age of Aquarius. It's a level of consciousness that we attain. And it's, you know, the key word for Aquarius is I know. So as we go to sleep every night, we're in class. I'm in class with you every night learning something. And and then when we're conscious, you know, on some level we know things. We don't know how we know. We just know, like, 7 times 7 is 49. Well, one day we're going to wake up, and when we need to know this information, it'll be there for us. And that's the time of enlightenment. And that's what's unfolding over this next year. More and more this energy is growing in a positive effect to help us deal with these changes. And we have to make the ability to make it a lesser severity than what it is. But astrologically, these are some of the things that the planets actually describe will come to pass. But if we know that now, we have the ability to make it lesser than what it can be, and how to deal with it, to have the consciousness to deal with it and move forward.
Lovely. Well, Reverend Hicks, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our fascinating time together. I wish to thank you on behalf of my co-hosts and audience for joining us tonight. You've been an absolute treasure.
Well, thank you. And then anyone that's listening out there, if they would like to get a session with me between now and Sunday, it's $50 off an hour session, or it's $35 off a half-hour session. And just to let me call and say you're from Burr, North Carolina, you heard me on the radio show, and then I'll know that it's you, and I'll give you that discount.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Reverend Hicks. Everybody, you can find her at charlenehicks.com. She's a psychic medium as well as an astrologer. She can contact spirits. She encourages you to contact her with a list of questions in hand, and she will send you away very satisfied. So please visit charlenehicks.com. Reverend Hicks, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on your show. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. See you next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers. Get access. Psychic access. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.